Well, let's continue with Brexit, shall we, as if we could talk about anything else today. And discussing developments, I'm joined now by political journalist Isabel Oakeshott, the chief leader writer at The Observer, Sonia Sodha, and the Scottish National Party's former head of communications, Kevin Pringle. Good to see you all this evening. Thanks very much for being with us on a Friday night. So, Isabel, another vote and nothing resolved. Well, on the day that we were meant to be leaving.
I know, isn't it extraordinary? I woke up this morning, the sun was shining. It felt like that morning 3 years ago, whenever it was, when we all thought, this is it, we're leaving the EU, and here we are again. And here we will be next week as well. And it's really very unclear tonight how this plays out. Now, there's a lot of talk this evening at Westminster around a general election. I really find it hard to work out quite how the mechanics of that would work, because under the Fixed Term Parliament Act, you have to get, I think it's a majority of 2/3 of the Commons to agree to an election. I can't see many Tories wanting an election right now. Labour would probably have to back one because they've been calling for one for so long, but I just don't see the numbers stacking up for that. And in any case, I don't really think it will resolve anything.
Yeah, do you think it would solve anything, a general election at the moment?
No, I don't, because you've still got a situation where both main parties are completely divided on Brexit. So it's quite hard to see how either Labour or the Conservatives going into a general election would be able to unify their MPs around a position that they could say that they've got a mandate for.
What do they put on their manifestos?
Exactly,
I mean,
exactly. So I think it wouldn't solve anything at all. I don't think that means, I think a general election probably, however we get to it, probably is quite likely in the next 2 or 3 months, just because of the amount of instability we're going to see. But I think coming out of today, all eyes are going to be on Parliament on Monday, because we've got the next important stage of this indicative votes process. And there is a chance, I mean, I think Theresa May's deal really is dead in the water now. She'll probably try bringing it back next week, but it's very hard to see how she gets the numbers. So I think there is a chance that MPs will coalesce around an alternative option on Monday. And I think that would provide the mandate for them to give Theresa May, them to order her essentially to ask for a longer extension from the EU for us to run in European elections, and really to sort of try and see if we can negotiate either a referendum or a different sort of Brexit, but a lot of uncertainty.
Gosh, what do you think about that, Kevin? The possibility that we could have to run in the European elections?
It's very possible. I think certainly there should be another electoral opportunity for people to have their say in all of this. I mean, whether it's a general election, I agree. I don't think a general election would necessarily resolve anything. I suspect it would return another minority government of one hue or another, and we're talking about the two main parties at Westminster divided anyway, so even if it was a Labour minority government, it would have many of the same similar difficulties, I think, that the Conservatives have had. So I think the people need to have their say. That would be my view. I'm a strong supporter of the people's vote.
But it's the same problem, isn't it? You know, as you've got with the general election, you could give the people their say, but first of all, what do you put on the ballot paper? A bit like, what do you put in the manifestos? And secondly, what if the result is very marginal again? You know, you've still got a big problem, haven't you? What are we going to do? The best of three? I mean, the people have had their say.
No, I think this time would be different, because you would be able to actually put a concrete option on the ballot paper, unlike last time where there was a very vague proposition, just leave. So it's very difficult for people to know what they're voting for, and actually for politicians to know what the real will of the people is. What sort of Brexit was it for? It was quite a narrow margin. So I think there are really strong arguments for putting a concrete option now we've got it. I think what's quite interesting about Monday. Well, I think that's a really good question.
You can't put her deal on it, because then you'd have the same situation again. The MPs wouldn't vote for it.
Well, I think actually one route for her to get her deal through, I don't think it's one that she's going to take, would be if she said to MPs, fine, I'll strike this compromise with you, you vote for my deal, and I will, and I promise you I will put it to the people.
And that could bring Labour, some Labour and more Labour MPs.
I actually think she would get the numbers for her deal then, so long as she committed to a referendum. And then that would be a referendum between her deal and the status quo. I think what else is quite interesting is on Monday...
Brexiteers just wouldn't accept that. That's the problem with that. That 17.4 million people would feel that they had been denied their democratic rights, because you have to have Brexit, you have to have leave on the menu, as it were.
But that's exactly what Theresa May's deal is.
Not in the eyes of leavers, which is why it's not gone through.
Let's just go back to what we were discussing before about Monday and this idea of more indicative votes, because it was interesting, wasn't it, with regard to the SNP in the last round of indicative votes, that the SNP abstained from Ken Clarke's idea of the customs union option. Now, if a softer Brexit was on the table, why would the SNP not go for it, or would they?
I suspect it would have to be a very soft Brexit, which would be customs union and single market membership, as they've said all along, actually, all the way back to the aftermath of the referendum in 2016. But it is interesting to look back at that.
Though, with Ken Clarke's amendment. That wasn't ruled out, was it?
And I'm sure that these things, I suspect, will be more defined still, and there'll be amendments being tabled, I think, even today, in terms of these, or motions, rather, in terms of the indicative votes on Monday. So we'll see them in their final form on Monday. But it was interesting to note that on the last run of indicative votes, the 8 that took place this week, then another referendum got the largest number of votes, and the customs union got the second largest number of votes. So these are certainly the options. But I think what we're getting down to now is really sort of brass tacks, what parliamentarians really, really want, if you like. And certainly from not just an SNP, but I think a much wider Scottish perspective, given that 62% of people in Scotland voted Remain in the referendum in 2016, is there's a very strong mood for the referendum, basically to cancel out a Brexit that people in Scotland never wanted, and which, interestingly, if you look at the British social attitudes analysis that came out this week, shows that actually people across the whole of the UK don't want now. I mean, as far as we can tell, on the basis of public opinion right now, 55% would support Remain. Now, of course, we can't know that's the case for sure, but there's only one way to find out: have that referendum, and then we'll all know.
Just sticking with the SNP, Ian Blackford came out quite quickly after the vote today and said Theresa May has to go. It's as simple as that. Is that your view? Does she need to go now? Would that solve anything?
Well, she clearly has to go quite soon, because everybody agrees with that now, not least Theresa May herself. So, obviously, her days are quite numbered. I mean, I think at the moment it needs a Prime Minister that's got a degree of flexibility and has got options open. But the difficulty is that Theresa May has never given herself that flexibility. I mean, if you look at it, for example, the option of a Prime Minister saying, OK, pass my deal and then put it to the people, I think certainly a new incoming Prime Minister with a bit more flexibility, a bit more imagination, if you like, could do that.
But the difficulty we have here, isn't it, that it's easy to say the Prime Minister should go now, and I've heard a lot of people saying it, but how do they propose she's replaced in an instant? If she resigned tomorrow with immediate effect, what do you do? Because I can tell you tonight that Tory MPs would not naturally all coalesce around one candidate, because we've got the same old problem.
Sure. So
the idea that David Middington could just
would allow that time,
happily become
an orderly,
But I think Theresa May resigning now wouldn't achieve very much at all. I think one thing that might be interesting about Monday is to see the sort of alliances that might be forming between MPs who are in favour of different options. So, for example, MPs in favour of a customs union and MPs in favour of a referendum. There's some talk of perhaps them forming an alliance and creating a new Brexit deal that they would put to the people in a referendum. And I think that's quite an interesting possibility.
Yeah, talking about that, I'd be interested to get your thoughts, Isabel, on the likes of Boris Johnson, Jacob Rees-Mogg changing their minds and voting.
Well, I understand why they did change their minds. I think it was an incredibly difficult day for many, many MPs right across the divide. There were MPs who found this an extremely emotional day, one way or another. The weight of responsibility on their shoulders to their constituents, to their own principles, to the country, so on and so forth.
Nothing to do with leadership ambitions?
Those two changed their mind on a purely pragmatic basis, which is that they recognise that the House of Commons is not going to support no deal. Therefore, they'd rather have a pretty suboptimal Brexit than no Brexit at all. That is the bitter realisation that they came to.
If they can change their minds, why can't the public change their mind and have a second referendum?
Well, I mean, I don't
absolutely agree with you. And as
a Brexiteer, I don't actually have that much of a problem with it. I honestly think Leave would win bigger. I just think it's a very, very bad principle to happy days.
And a final thought from you, Kevin?
Well, I think that it's certainly the case. There's only one way to find out. I mean, we're all speculating about these things. There's been so many, parliamentary games, so many machinations, politicians changing their mind. I mean, my own view is I think the Brexiteers missed their moment. I think their moment, if you really believe in Brexit, their moment was to pass that deal and get the legal fact of Brexit.
The problem is that many Brexiteers thought the deal is so bad it isn't Brexit anyway.
Well, I think they've missed the chance, and I think we're seeing a process that hopefully takes us from Parliament and the politicians back to the people, and they can have their say.
We must leave it there. Kevin, Isabel, Sonia, good to see you all. Thank you very much indeed. Let's finish.